Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. أما بعد أحبتي في الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أسأل الله كريم رب العرش العظيم أن يتولنا في الدنيا والآخرة. A question was asked, Jazakallah khairan for the explanation. I wanted to ask, if someone going back to sin after Ramadan, does that mean his or her tawbah and all ibadah in Ramadan isn't accepted? Does that mean he or she is a hypocrite because going back to sin after Ramadan? So, in general, هذا بحسب الشخص. This has to do with depending upon the individual themselves. So meaning, if someone made tawbah, that means they actually repented from the major sins. I'm not saying that they just stopped sins during Ramadan, but they actually, met the conditions of tawbah. They had the intention not to return back to the sin. They left the sin, and they felt sorrow for it, and made istighfar. Then this is called tawbah, that they were sincere. But then they slipped up after Ramadan. Something happened. They got a little sad. Someone brought some weed by, they fell into it, whatever the case may be. So that does not mean that the tawbah was not necessarily accepted. Those kind of things, we can only look for indications, but we just don't know. That person could have had sincere tawbah, and they could have had sincere sadness after Ramadan, and they could have sincerely messed up after Ramadan and didn't have the tawfiq, and they went back to the sins. Okay? Another aspect of this is a person could have actually not made a sincere tawbah, and then they just went back to the sins. So that is really going to depend upon the individual. But one of the signs of a person's success in Ramadan, that their Ramadan was accepted, is that they don't return to the sins. And another aspect of the question, I wanted to ask, if someone going back to sin after Ramadan, does that mean his or her tawbah and all ibadah in Ramadan isn't accepted? So no, that does not mean that. It could mean that. It does not mean that. Which means, again, it depends on the scenario. If the person was not sincere during Ramadan, or whatever the case may be, then them returning back to sin, then of course they're without sincerity, your deeds are not accepted. However, as I said in the first scenario, that someone may have been sincere, but then they slipped up and they fell. So that does not negate all the ibadah that they did. Only kufr and shirk would do that, as far as them not having their worship accepted. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Again, it bihasab hal shakhs. It depends upon the condition of the person. And then the other aspect of the question, does that mean he or she is a hypocrite because going back to sin after Ramadan? Again, that depends upon the person, because as we talked about, that hypocrisy is of different types. There is hypocrisy, nifaq amali, or nifaq i'tiqadi. So there is nifaq, or hypocrisy, that has to do with your deeds and actions. Okay, and that type of hypocrisy is sinful, but it does not take you out of the fold of Islam. Then there is for example, lying, cheating, breaking contracts, being deceptive, and having hypocritical traits. That's all negative. It's all sinful and major sins. But that it means that is a Muslim that has major sins. Hypocrisy that has to do with your aqidah, your creed, meaning you do not believe in Islam, but yet you outwardly pray and you outwardly fast in order to please the people, in order to gain some worldly benefits, to get a salary because you work in a Muslim country, whatever the case may be. Then that is the major hypocrisy, which takes a person out of the fold of Islam. So a person like that is not a Muslim. They are a hypocrite. Now, so going back to sin, this can be a sign of hypocrisy, and no doubt, in general, it's a sign of weak iman. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to bless us all with ikhlas, with thabat, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.